this video, I'll show you how to identify the gradient and the y-intercept from a graph. So you should always start with the y-intercept first. All you need to do is determine the value of y at the position where the line crosses the y-axis. So that's fairly straightforward. After that, you'll look for the gradient, and this is where you must choose 2 points to compare, and you're comparing the amount of vertical movement, which is your rise, for the amount of movement horizontally to the right, which is your run. We'll go through some examples of that now. So looking at this graph here, you can see our axes go 0, 5, 10, negative 5, negative 10, which means each one of these must be 1 unit. So that's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and look at that. This graph is crossing at negative 4, which means that C in our y equals mx plus c, our c is negative 4. Next, you want to pick out 2 points, and I'd suggest you pick out the y-intercept if it is actually crossing on an integer, a whole number, and we'll follow the line up and look for a position where, if you have a look at the grid behind it, I'm just going to draw over some of the grid lines here, you want to choose points that go through where you can see grids crossing over. So a point here, 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 any of these sort of points, not anything in between part way, because it's going to be really hard for you to figure that out. So what you do is you'll look towards the right and you'll go, okay, where am I crossing a point like that? Hopefully you see right here we are crossing such a point. So let's have a look. This graph goes up 1, 2, 3 every time it goes across 1, 2, which means our gradient, which is rise over run, is really a rise of 3 every time it runs 2. And we can see it's positive, it's going up from left to right. So we simply write this out again, but instead of m, we'll put in our 3 over 2. And instead of c, we'll put in our intercept, which is negative 4. Okay, now we're looking at a line that is traveling down from left to right. So whenever you're if you're ever a bit unsure about the gradient, think of a little car over here. The car can only travel to the right. So you've got to ask yourself, is the car going down or is it going up? And this car always starts at the left and drives towards the right. So in this case, that car would be driving down. So we know that when we work out our gradient, it should have a negative in front of it. Okay, let's start with the y-intercept though, because I've said that that's the most straightforward way of doing it. And here, the y-intercept is actually 0. Let's look for our next point to compare, and you could choose this one. If you missed that, you would have kept going and found one here. So let's look, it's going down 1, so we've already got our down with our negative sign, and it's running 1, 2. So in terms of y equals mx plus c, m is negative 1 over 2, and c is 0. But of course we don't write that on the end, there's no point. And there's another way this can be written, I just want to show you, negative, and instead of writing the 1, you can just pop the x on top. So this line is y equals negative x on 2. This line, it's not going either up or down, it's going straight across, it is flat. First of all, let's just quickly figure out the y-intercept, which is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, so it's negative 3. Now, if you can't remember what sort of gradient this is, and your options are either a 0 gradient or undefined, if you can't remember which one it is, just pick out a point like we've done on the previous graphs to compare. So for this one, the graph, the line, is not going up or down, which means its rise is 0. And for this point I've chosen, the run is 1, 2. Now, 0 divided by any number is going to give you an answer of 0. So this is actually our 0 gradient. So in terms of y equals mx plus c, m is 0 and c is -3. But of course we don't write that out, so really this is just the line y equals -3. And if you're comfortable recognizing that this is a zero gradient line, you might be able to go straight to y equals -3 without going through the calculations over here. Now we've got that other situation, so if you know that the last one was zero gradient, hopefully you're saying now that this one is an undefined gradient, but I'm going to go through how to work that out. So firstly, our y-intercept. Well, this line is going parallel to our y-axis. So by definition, if it's going parallel, these lines are never ever going to touch, which means we don't actually have a y-intercept. So I don't want to see you writing 0 here, because if you wrote that the y-intercept was 0, you're saying that this line is touching here. So instead, for this, I would write NA for not applicable, or just put a dash, like there's nothing there. What about our gradient? Let's have a look. So pick out a point here, pick out a point somewhere along there where it's crossing over the grid, so I could have chosen any of these points. Now our rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, but what is our run to the right? There's no run, which means our number here is 0. Now remember, if you divide by 0, that is impossible. So if you type that into your calculator, you would see error. So I want you to think about this as being undefined. Okay, with no y-intercept and an undefined gradient, how are we going to write the equation for this line? Well, the way I'd like you to think about it is you have a particular x value here, and if you picked any position along this line going up and up and up to infinity, or down, down, down to -infinity, the value of x is always the same. So this line is going to be x equals something, and that something is the x-intercept. So let's have a look. This is 0, this is 1, so this part here must be 0.5. This bit here is 0.25, and the part where it is intercepting the x-axis is 0.75. So this line is x equals 0.75. Now it's your turn to have a go. What I'd like you to do is, in a moment, pause the video, work out the y-intercept, work out the gradient, and then write your answer in y equals mx plus c form. So pause the video now and then resume when you've had practice. Okay, hopefully you came up with these 4 equations. If you're not sure about how to calculate any of these, please come and see me in class time. So hopefully this video has supported you to understand how to determine both the y-intercept and the gradient from a graph. Thanks for watching.